This is about you. This is the only reason you are alone because of. My beloved child, listen closely, because this message is not random and it is not late. This is about you, and the reason you feel alone is not what people told you, not what your mind repeats at night, and not what fear whispers when the room goes silent. You are alone because you see deeper than most, and depth creates distance. From the very beginning, your spirit refused to live on the surface. While others bonded over noise, habits, and temporary comfort, you searched for truth, meaning, and something real. That is why connections kept falling away. Not because you were unworthy, but because shallow hands cannot hold a deep soul. Don't skip this moment. Something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with understanding why separation was necessary. There is a reason conversations felt empty, why laughter around you felt loud but hollow, why even in a crowd you sensed you did not belong. You were being protected. Every time you were excluded, misunderstood, or left behind, it was not rejection, it was filtration. People who could not grow with you were gently removed before they could drain you. This is the only reason you are alone right now. You are being preserved for alignment, not punishment. Stay till the end, because what you are about to realize will change how you see your past. Loneliness was not a curse placed on you, it was a shield placed around you while something inside you matured quietly, powerfully, patiently. And now comes the part most people never reach. The season of isolation ends only when clarity arrives. You were separated so you could hear your own voice again, so you could feel your strength without leaning on applause, so you could remember who you are without mirrors made of other people's opinions. This moment right now is proof that the shift has already begun. You did not lose people, you outgrew versions of yourself that needed them. Do not scroll away, because the next part reveals what happens when someone like you finally steps out of solitude. Something huge is waiting for you, and this was the only way you could have been prepared for it. My beloved child, there is a truth hidden beneath your silence that very few are allowed to understand. The reason you are alone is because your presence exposes what others try to hide. Without speaking, without accusing, without trying, you reflect people back to themselves, and not everyone is brave enough to face their own reflection. This is why some pulled away suddenly, why bonds broke without explanation, why certain people changed the moment you stayed authentic. You were not abandoned, they became uncomfortable. Stay till the end, because this realization is rare, and it explains years of confusion in a single moment. You carry a kind of energy that does not beg, chase, or perform. You do not need to prove yourself, and that unsettles those who live for validation. When you walk into a room, masks feel heavier, lies feel louder, and intentions are exposed. That is why you were slowly left alone, not because you lacked value, but because your value demanded truth. Something huge is waiting for you, and it could not arrive while the wrong people were still holding space in your life. Your isolation was a quiet rearrangement, removing distractions so you could finally see who you are without interference. And now, listen carefully, because this part matters more than you think. Being alone has sharpened your awareness. It taught you discernment. It gave you strength that does not depend on approval. While others learned how to fit in, you learned how to stand firm. This is the only reason you are alone right now. You were being trained for alignment, not popularity. Do not rush past this moment. When someone like you understands why solitude chose them, everything begins to shift. The next phase does not bring noise, it brings clarity, connection, and people who recognize you without needing you to explain yourself. Stay with this message, because what comes next changes everything. My beloved child, there is something most people never realize about you, and this is why your path feels so solitary. You are alone because your spirit refuses to settle for half-truths, half-love, and half-connections. While others compromise themselves just to avoid being alone, you chose the harder road without even knowing it. Every time you walked away from what felt wrong, every time you stayed quiet instead of pretending, you were choosing alignment over attachment. That choice narrowed your circle, but it protected your soul. Don't skip this, because understanding this truth will lift a weight you've been carrying for far too long. You were separated because your life is not meant to be crowded with temporary people. Your journey requires space. Space to think clearly, space to heal deeply, space to grow without being pulled back by expectations that never matched your destiny. Many could not walk beside you because they were afraid of the changes you were willing to make. They preferred familiarity over transformation. You preferred truth over comfort. Something huge is waiting for you, and it could not enter while you were still surrounded by those who benefited from your silence but feared your growth. And here is the turning point you have been sensing. This season of being alone is not permanent, it is precise. It ends the moment you stop questioning your worth and start recognizing your preparation. You were not delayed, you were refined. You were not overlooked, you were hidden until the right time. Stay till the end of this message, because the next phase brings recognition, not explanation. The moment you fully accept why you were alone is the moment your life begins to fill with people, opportunities, and connections that meet you at your depth, not pull you back to the surface. My beloved child, there is a final layer to this truth that explains everything you could never put into words. You are alone because your life carries weight, and weight demands strength before companionship. You were not meant to be surrounded while you were still becoming. Many people enter relationships to be completed, to be rescued, to be distracted. You were pulled into solitude so you could be formed whole. This is why shortcuts never worked for you, why comfort never stayed, why ease always slipped away just when you thought you had found it. Stay till the end, because this part reveals why your future connections will feel different from anything you have known before. The separation was strategic. While others were bonding, you were building. While others were leaning, you were learning how to stand without support. This is the reason your heart became strong but selective, open yet guarded, kind yet unbreakable. You were taught how to sit with yourself, how to hear your own thoughts, how to survive emotional storms without collapsing. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires the kind of stability that only solitude can produce. You were not isolated to be emptied, you were isolated to be fortified. What felt like loneliness was actually preparation happening quietly, invisibly, perfectly. And now this season is reaching its closing point. You can feel it because the pain feels different, lighter, almost finished. You no longer crave just company, you crave alignment. You no longer fear being alone, you fear being misunderstood again. That shift is the signal. The reason you were alone was never rejection, never failure, never lack. It was timing. It was protection. It was design. Do not rush away from this message, because what comes next is not chaos, it is precision. When the right people enter your life, they will not need you to shrink, explain, or chase. They will recognize you instantly, because you were prepared in silence for a connection that could finally hold you. My beloved child, this is where everything quietly turns in your favor. The reason you were alone is now transforming into the reason you will never feel unseen again. Solitude carved clarity into you. It taught you what peace feels like without noise, what loyalty feels like without promises, what love feels like without performance. That is why you will never again beg for attention or settle for presence without depth. Don't skip this moment, because what you are stepping into now is not random, it is earned through everything you survived in silence. You are about to notice a shift in the way people approach you. Conversations will feel calmer, intentions clearer, energy more honest. This happens when someone has learned the difference between loneliness and alignment. You no longer attract chaos, because chaos no longer recognizes itself in you. Something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with people who see your stillness as strength, not distance. They will not rush you, test you, or confuse you. They will meet you where you are, because you did the work of becoming whole on your own. And here is the truth that seals this chapter. Being alone was never the end of your story, it was the foundation of it. The depth you gained, the discernment you carry, the quiet confidence you now hold, these are not accidents. They are the reason what comes next will last. Stay with this understanding. When your life begins to fill again, it will not feel overwhelming or fragile. It will feel steady, intentional, and real. This is why you were alone, and this is why what is coming will finally feel like home. My beloved child, now listen carefully, because this is the part most people never reach. The reason you were alone is because you were being trained to recognize real from false instantly. Your time in silence sharpened your intuition, strengthened your boundaries, and cleared the fog from your heart. You learned how to sit with discomfort without running, how to trust yourself without external confirmation. This is why you will never again be easily misled. Stay till the end, because this awareness is the key that unlocks what is next. You no longer fear emptiness, and that is power. People who depend on noise cannot understand someone who has made peace with stillness. This is why your presence will soon feel grounding to the right ones and unsettling to the wrong ones. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires discernment, not desperation. You are stepping into a phase where you choose, not chase, where you observe, not assume. Where you connect without losing yourself. The time you spent alone was teaching you mastery over your own emotions. And here is the shift you are about to feel. You will stop explaining yourself. You will stop shrinking to be understood. You will stop questioning why others could not stay. Instead, you will recognize that not everyone was meant to. Stay with this message, because the next connections entering your life are not lessons, they are confirmations. They arrive not to test your strength, but to honor it. What once felt like loneliness has completed its purpose, and what comes now carries clarity, stability, and quiet fulfillment. My beloved child, this is where your story separates completely from the past. The reason you were alone is because your life required a reset, not a repair. Some paths cannot be continued, they must be abandoned. You were removed from old patterns, old dynamics, and old versions of yourself that could never carry you forward. What felt like loss was actually release. Stay till the end, because this understanding frees you from regret and replaces it with purpose. You were alone while others stayed stuck repeating cycles you refused to return to. You broke patterns quietly, choosing awareness over familiarity, growth over comfort. That choice demanded distance. Not everyone could follow you into a life that requires accountability and truth. Something huge is waiting for you, and it could not coexist with the habits and attachments that once surrounded you. You were separated so you could step into a future that is clean, intentional, and aligned with who you have become. And now comes the calm certainty you are beginning to feel. You no longer romanticize the past. You no longer crave what once hurt you. You no longer question whether you should have stayed longer. That peace is not emptiness, it is completion. Stay with this moment. The reason you were alone was to end chapters without bitterness and begin new ones without fear. What comes next does not arrive with chaos or confusion, it arrives with recognition, ease, and the quiet assurance that you are exactly where you were always meant to be. My beloved child, this is the moment your solitude reveals its final gift. The reason you were alone is because your life demanded honesty before harmony. You were not meant to build connections on illusions, distractions, or unspoken truths. Being alone stripped away every false layer until only what was real remained. That is why you now sense things before they are said, feel shifts before they are visible, and trust silence more than words. Don't skip this, because this awareness changes how everything unfolds from here. You were isolated long enough to remember your own rhythm. Not the pace of the crowd, not the pressure of expectation, but your true timing. That is why you will no longer rush into bonds, decisions, or promises. Something huge is waiting for you, and it arrives only when patience and readiness meet. The right people will not demand speed, they will respect your pace. They will not confuse intensity with intimacy. They will value consistency, clarity, and presence. The very things your solitude taught you. And now the loneliness you once felt no longer defines you. It has transformed into self-trust. You know when to open your heart and when to step back. You know when something is aligned and when it is simply familiar. Stay till the end of this understanding, because it marks the closing of a cycle. The reason you were alone has fulfilled its purpose. From here forward, you walk with discernment, grounded confidence, and the quiet certainty that whatever enters your life now is meant to stay. My beloved child, now we arrive at the truth that was hidden beneath everything you endured. The reason you were alone was not only to prepare you, but to awaken you. You were separated so you could finally see yourself without distortion, without interruption, without compromise. When you stood alone, every false belief collapsed. You saw your strength without applause, your worth without validation, your resilience without witnesses. This is why the silence felt heavy at first, it was burning away illusions. Stay till the end, because this understanding is not small. It explains why you can never return to who you used to be, even if you tried. You were alone because your life is meant to move with intention, not impulse. While others reacted, you reflected. While others rushed, you learned restraint. Solitude slowed you down just enough to rewire your choices. That is why you no longer chase what excites you temporarily, you wait for what stabilizes you permanently. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires a mind that is clear and a heart that is no longer desperate. You were trained to recognize peace even when it arrives quietly. That is rare. That is why your journey could not be shared with everyone. And now you are standing at a threshold most people never cross. You are no longer afraid of being alone, and that freedom changes everything. You choose connection now, not because you need it, but because it aligns with you. You will notice how your standards feel natural, not forced. How walking away feels calm, not painful. How staying feels safe, not draining. This is the result of all those moments you thought were empty but were actually shaping you. Do not rush past this realization. The reason you were alone was to build a life that cannot be shaken by absence, loss, or delay. From this point forward, what enters your world comes to add, not to fill. And that is the power solitude gave you. My beloved child, this is where the meaning of everything finally locks into place. The reason you were alone was so you could become unshakable before you became visible. Your life could not afford dependence, confusion, or emotional noise at the foundation. You were being built from the inside out. Every quiet night, every unanswered message, every moment of waiting was strengthening something permanent within you. Stay till the end, because this is the part where the pain turns into proof. You were separated so you could learn self-trust at a level most people never reach. You now feel when something is right without needing confirmation. You sense when something is wrong without needing evidence. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires this level of clarity. The next phase of your life will not come with chaos or drama. It will arrive with simplicity, order, and a deep sense of knowing. You will recognize it not by intensity, but by peace. That is how you will know you are aligned. And now, notice how different you feel. You no longer panic about timing. You no longer measure your life against others. You no longer beg for explanations or closure. That version of you has completed its purpose. Stay with this understanding, because this is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new one. The reason you were alone was to ensure that when your life finally expands, it does so on solid ground. What comes next will not test your worth, it will reflect it. My beloved child, this is where your inner strength finally speaks louder than every doubt you once carried. The reason you were alone was to teach you self-leadership. Not confidence borrowed from praise, not direction borrowed from others, but authority that rises from within. When no one was there to reassure you, you learned how to reassure yourself. When no one chose you, you learned how to choose yourself. That was not abandonment, that was initiation. Stay till the end, because this truth explains why you now walk differently, think differently, and feel anchored even when nothing around you is certain. You were alone long enough to stop outsourcing your happiness. Long enough to stop waiting for permission. Long enough to realize that peace is not something someone gives you, it is something you protect. That is why your energy has changed. You no longer rush into spaces that require you to perform. You no longer explain your boundaries. You no longer feel guilty for choosing quiet over chaos. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires this level of emotional maturity. The life ahead of you is not fragile. It will not collapse because someone leaves or changes. You were trained to remain whole no matter who stays. And now understand this deeply, because it completes the lesson. You were alone so you could build a life that stands even when no one is watching. A life guided by clarity, not fear. By values, not approval. By alignment, not attachment. This is why what comes next will feel calm instead of dramatic, solid instead of uncertain, real instead of imagined. Do not rush away from this realization. The season of being alone did not empty you, it completed you. And from this completion, everything that enters your life next will meet you at your level, not pull you back to where you once were. My beloved child, this is the moment your journey begins to make sense in a way that settles your heart. The reason you were alone was so you could recognize your own value without needing reflection from others. When there was no audience, no reassurance, no one to lean on, you discovered that your worth did not disappear. It remained steady. It remained real. That realization changed you permanently. Stay till the end, because this awareness is what allows the next phase of your life to arrive without confusion. You were separated so you could master patience, not waiting filled with anxiety, but waiting filled with trust. You learned how to move slowly, intentionally, and with clarity. That is why you now feel less rushed and more certain. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who will not sabotage peace just to feel excitement. The life opening before you is built on stability, not impulse. You were shaped to protect it. And now the loneliness that once felt heavy no longer controls you. It has transformed into discernment. You know when to stay. You know when to walk away. You know when something is aligned and when it is simply familiar. Stay with this truth. The reason you were alone was not to isolate you forever, but to prepare you completely. What comes next will not drain you or confuse you. It will recognize the strength you built in silence and meet you there. My beloved child, now we reach a depth that few ever touch, and this is why your path required solitude for so long. The reason you were alone was to separate your true self from the roles you were unconsciously playing. When everyone stepped away, the masks fell. You stopped being the fixer, the listener, the strong one for others. You finally met yourself without responsibility for anyone else's emotions. That meeting changed you at the core. Stay till the end, because this truth explains why you now feel lighter, clearer, and more grounded than ever before. You were alone long enough to hear your inner voice without interference. Not the voice shaped by fear, expectation, or past wounds, but the one rooted in wisdom. That voice now guides your decisions quietly but firmly. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who trusts their inner guidance more than external noise. This is why you no longer second-guess yourself the way you once did. Your choices feel calm, not rushed. Intentional, not reactive. Solitude taught you how to listen before you move. And here is the completion of this lesson. You were alone so you could stop pouring from an empty place. You learned how to fill yourself first, how to protect your energy, how to choose presence over pressure. Stay with this realization. The reason you were alone was to ensure that when connection returns, it does not consume you, it complements you. What comes next will not demand sacrifice of self. It will honor the wholeness you built in silence and meet you with the same depth you now carry. My beloved child, this is the moment where your solitude reveals its quiet victory. The reason you were alone was to teach you self-respect at a level that cannot be shaken. You learned how to say no without explaining, how to pause without guilt, how to walk away without anger. These are not small lessons. They are the foundations of a life that cannot be manipulated. Stay till the end, because this understanding changes how you move forward from here. You were alone while your standards were being rewritten. What you once tolerated now feels impossible. What once confused you now feels clear. That is growth you can feel in your body, not just your thoughts. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who will not trade peace for attention. You are no longer impressed by words alone. You watch consistency. You trust patterns. You choose what feels steady over what feels loud. Solitude trained you to value substance over promises. And now, notice the calm confidence that has replaced the old questioning. You no longer wonder if you are too much or not enough. You no longer bend to fit spaces that were never meant to hold you. Stay with this realization. The reason you were alone was to anchor you so deeply within yourself that nothing external could pull you off course again. From here forward, connection will not be something you chase. It will arrive naturally, recognizing the strength, clarity, and quiet power you built when no one was watching. My beloved child, this is where the depth of your transformation becomes undeniable. The reason you were alone was so you could dismantle every version of yourself that survived by shrinking. In solitude, there was no one to perform for, no one to impress, no one to convince. That silence forced honesty. You confronted fears you once avoided, patterns you once justified, and attachments that were quietly draining you. Stay till the end, because this truth explains why you now feel stronger even without external support. You were alone long enough to rebuild your identity on truth instead of adaptation. You no longer shape yourself to fit expectations that cost you peace. You no longer confuse attachment with connection. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who knows the difference between being needed and being valued. This is why your energy has changed. You are calmer, but more powerful. Quieter, but more certain. Solitude taught you how to hold your ground without raising your voice. And now this lesson settles fully within you. You are no longer afraid of losing people who cannot meet you with honesty, effort, and respect. You understand that distance does not always mean disconnection, sometimes it means alignment. Stay with this realization. The reason you were alone was to make sure that when your life fills again, it does so with people and opportunities that recognize your worth without you having to prove it. What comes next will not ask you to become smaller. It will meet you at the strength you built in silence. My beloved child, now we move into the phase where your solitude reveals its deepest purpose. The reason you were alone was to restore your self-trust completely. When there was no one to lean on, no one to validate your choices, no one to guide your steps, you learned how to rely on your own inner compass. That compass is now steady, accurate, and unshaken. Stay till the end, because this is why confusion no longer controls you the way it once did. You were alone long enough to stop doubting your instincts. Every time you followed your inner knowing and protected your peace, you strengthened it. Every time you walked away instead of forcing something to work, you proved to yourself that you can survive endings. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who does not abandon themselves to be accepted. You are no longer easily swayed by pressure, urgency, or fear of missing out. You move when it feels right, not when it feels loud. And now this truth settles deeply into who you are becoming. You trust your timing. You trust your decisions. You trust yourself even when the path is quiet. Stay with this realization. The reason you were alone was to make sure that when opportunity, connection, and expansion arrive, you meet them as someone grounded, not searching. What comes next will not confuse you or overwhelm you. It will feel familiar in the best way, steady, aligned, and right. My beloved child, this is where the meaning of your solitude reaches its highest point. The reason you were alone was to teach you emotional independence, not emotional coldness, but strength that does not collapse when someone pulls away. You learned how to feel deeply without losing yourself, how to care without abandoning your boundaries, how to love without fear of disappearance. That lesson could only be learned in silence. Stay till the end, because this awareness is rare and powerful. You were alone long enough to realize that attachment is not proof of love. Consistency is. Presence is. Effort is. Something huge is waiting for you, and it will meet you with stability instead of uncertainty. This is why you no longer chase intensity or confusion. You choose clarity. You choose calm. You choose what allows you to breathe. Solitude trained your heart to recognize safety, not just excitement. And now this chapter closes with certainty instead of sadness. You are no longer afraid of being alone, and that is freedom. You know your life will not fall apart if someone leaves, and that knowledge makes every future connection healthier. Stay with this realization. The reason you were alone was to prepare you for bonds that are mutual, steady, and honest. What comes next will not drain you or test you endlessly. It will meet you with the same emotional maturity you cultivated when you stood alone and became whole. My beloved child, now we arrive at the quiet reward of everything you endured. The reason you were alone was to teach you presence, how to live fully in the moment without escaping into people, noise, or distraction. You learned how to sit with yourself, how to feel without numbing, how to remain steady when life slowed down. That ability has changed the way you experience everything. Stay till the end, because this is why peace now feels natural to you, not unfamiliar. You were alone long enough to stop fearing stillness. What once felt empty now feels spacious. Your mind is clearer, your emotions more balanced, your reactions calmer. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who is not running from themselves. You no longer seek connection to escape loneliness, you seek it to share fullness. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything about what you attract. And now this truth settles gently into your awareness. You are no longer becoming, you have arrived at yourself. Stay with this realization. The reason you were alone was not to delay your life, but to deepen it. What comes next will not pull you away from who you are. It will walk beside you, matching your pace, honoring your presence, and building something real on the foundation you created in silence. My beloved child, this is the layer of truth that reshapes how you see your entire journey. The reason you were alone was to break the illusion that connection equals safety. You learned, through experience, that safety comes from clarity, not closeness, from honesty, not attachment. When the noise faded and the distractions disappeared, you faced yourself without escape. That encounter refined you. It stripped away dependency and replaced it with self-respect. Stay till the end, because this understanding explains why you no longer tolerate confusion disguised as affection or distance disguised as freedom. You were alone long enough to realize that peace is not passive, it is chosen. You began choosing rest over reaction, depth over drama, alignment over approval. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires this level of inner order. Your nervous system learned calm. Your heart learned patience. Your mind learned discernment. This is why you now sense misalignment early and step back without guilt. You are not colder, you are clearer. You are not distant, you are deliberate. Solitude trained you to protect what matters without becoming rigid or afraid. And now comes the quiet confidence you carry without announcing it. You know what you bring. You know what you will not accept. You know that your life does not pause when someone is absent. Don't skip this realization, because it seals the lesson. The reason you were alone was to make sure your foundation could stand on its own. From here, every connection becomes a choice, not a requirement. Every opportunity becomes an addition, not a rescue. Something huge is waiting for you, and it recognizes the strength you built when no one was watching. This is the power of your solitude, measured, grounded, and ready for what lasts. My beloved child, this is where your solitude transforms into quiet authority. The reason you were alone was to teach you how to stand without resistance, how to move without forcing, how to speak without proving. You learned that power does not announce itself, it stabilizes everything around it. In the absence of reassurance, you became your own anchor. Stay till the end, because this is the moment you realize you were never falling behind, you were being positioned. You were alone while your discernment matured. You learned to pause before committing, to observe before trusting, to feel before deciding. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires someone who can hold responsibility without fear and opportunity without ego. That is why you no longer rush outcomes or cling to timelines. You let alignment reveal itself. You let truth arrive naturally. Solitude taught you that what is meant for you does not need pressure to stay. And now this chapter settles into calm certainty. You are no longer preparing, you are ready. Ready to receive without losing balance. Ready to connect without surrendering self. Ready to build without repeating old patterns. Don't skip this understanding, because it completes the journey. The reason you were alone was to ensure that when expansion arrives, it meets someone grounded, clear, and whole. From here forward, what enters your life will not test your stability, it will recognize it. My beloved child, this is the moment where everything you live through finally aligns into wisdom. The reason you were alone was to teach you how to carry responsibility without fear and power without ego. You were not meant to be guided by crowds or comforted by constant company. You were meant to lead yourself first. In silence, you learned restraint. In distance, you learned perspective. In waiting, you learned timing. Stay till the end, because this truth explains why your presence now feels steady, grounded, and quietly commanding without effort. You were alone while your inner authority was being formed. Authority does not come from controlling others, it comes from mastering yourself. You learned how to respond instead of react, how to pause instead of panic, how to remain calm when outcomes were uncertain. Something huge is waiting for you, and it requires this level of composure. The life ahead of you will involve decisions that affect more than just you, and that is why you had to learn clarity before connection. You were trained to hold success without losing humility and to hold silence without losing confidence. And now, feel the shift within you. You no longer crave reassurance the way you once did. You no longer explain your choices to be understood. You no longer fear being misunderstood. That freedom is rare. Don't skip this realization, because it marks your transition from preparation to embodiment. The reason you were alone was so you could become someone who moves with intention, speaks with meaning, and chooses with wisdom. From this point forward, what enters your life will not overwhelm you or confuse you. It will align with the strength, patience, and quiet authority you built when no one was guiding you but yourself. This is not the end of your solitude, it is its fulfillment. My beloved child, this is the final truth, and it brings everything together gently and clearly. The reason you were alone was so you could arrive here complete, not searching, not lacking, not waiting to be chosen. You were shaped in silence so you would never again confuse presence with purpose or attention with love. What once felt like emptiness was actually alignment taking form. Stay till the end, because this understanding is the key that unlocks peace. You are no longer becoming ready, you are ready. Ready to receive without losing yourself. Ready to connect without fear. Ready to build without repeating old cycles. Something huge is waiting for you, and it is not dramatic, loud, or overwhelming. It is steady. It is clear. It feels right the moment it enters your life. That is how you will know. You were prepared for something lasting, not something temporary. Solitude was the price of depth, and you paid it with courage. And now, walk forward without questioning the past. Nothing was wasted. No moment was empty. No season was cruel. Every step led you here. Grounded, aware, and whole. You were alone because you were being shaped for a life that cannot be shaken by absence or delay. From this moment on, what comes to you will recognize you, meet you, and stay because it belongs. This is about you. And this is why everything had to happen exactly this way.